Hello, hello. This is Tondo from Cosmic Spark, and I'm back again with another video. It is time for Aquarius in our astrology series. So let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into it. Alrighty, so Aquarius is the 11th sign of the zodiac. We are in the fourth quadrant, so we're focused about the spiritual experience, the community, the society, the greater collective unconscious, depending on which sign you're looking at. And in Aquarius, we're definitely thinking about the future. We're thinking about how what we're doing now impacts society in the long term. We're thinking very long term, and we're thinking about how we can improve society and the greater unconscious so that we can progress as a group. Aquarius is traditionally ruled by Saturn, giving it staying power, long-lasting energy, the ability to plan ahead and think ahead. But its modern rulership is Uranus. This is the eccentric father of the zodiac. And so there's a lot of originality, eccentricity, revolution, technology. There's a lot of techie, forward-thinking kind of energy. Bit of spirituality as well, because Uranus is, I would say, a spiritual planet. So 11th sign of the zodiac, the middle of the fourth quadrant. Aquarius is a fixed sign, so headstrong. The ability to stay on task, to do things that are for the long haul. They're also the last air sign, so this is the full maturity that it can take to be an air sign. They are, I would say, the most attached of the air signs, the most thoughtful in like a grander way. I think people tend to think of Aquarians when you meet them one-on-one as very maybe, especially if you're not necessarily one of their friends and in their friendship group, you can think that they're very cold and that they can be selfish or self-focused, whatever you want to call it. But I think Aquarians care so much that they have to be able to switch off and they have to be able to not care about everything all the time. And so when you're close to an Aquarian, you will see how much they care, not just for you as their family, as their friend, as their lover, but you can see how they think about things. They really think ahead of their times. A lot of Aquarians are so ahead of their times. They are the type to just do something, have it confuse people, and then maybe 10 years down the line, we're all starting to do it because we realized that there was something there in the first place. Trendsetters, comfortable with independence, comfortable with forging their own path. They were born for that. So that's the basics, right? Uranus is considered to be an androgynous planet. Saturn is considered to be a masculine planet. I think you could certainly look at it from both angles. There's a masculine element, and then their rulership is either androgynous, non-binary, whatever you want to call it, or masculine. And I think that will overwhelmingly give Aquarians a very masculine feel and vibe about how they do things. So firstly, let me start with Aquarian men and I'll end with Aquarian women. So I actually my sibling is an Aquarian, my aunt is an Aquarian, and at least in my immediate family, which is my mum, my sibling, and myself, we all have quite prominent 11th house placements. So my mum's rulership is in the 11th, my rulership is in the 11th, let alone our other placements that are also in the 11th. So you can say I'm quite well acquainted with Aquarian energy. Aquarian men, I think, are even harder to pin down than the women, especially if you like them in a romantic sense. They were born for independence. They, having grown up with Aquarians, exhibit it from a very young age. Just being able to think for themselves, which sounds so basic, but so many people kind of just accept what's around them. So I'll give you an example in the sense of my own sibling. While it took me until about 16 to really start thinking and questioning my religiosity, my brother at a young age just decided that he didn't believe in it. He didn't like it. You couldn't force him to go to church. but he was very strong in his feelings and beliefs, and he has maintained that. I think it's very admirable for how young he was to assert himself like that. And I think Aquarians are fantastic at asserting themselves and maintaining their independence. Sometimes Aquarians, the way they were raised, they were sort of left to their own devices. Sometimes they are as eccentric as one of the parents, and they kind of adopt the more eccentric qualities of one of their parents. But there's this aspect of their upbringing that kind of either nursed their ability to be eccentric, or they were eccentric to spite their upbringing, to set themselves aside. And it really actually comes from, I think, like a really important place of values. I think Aquarians really, more than anyone, understand their own value system. Whether you understand it or not, whether you've ever heard them articulate it, if you can ever get them on the topic, they live by certain rules and their own understanding of the world that they've conjured. And for you to be able to understand them, I think you could get to a place of understanding. I think how much you understand of an Aquarian is actually based on how much they let you understand, because they hold such a tight hold on their private world, especially the Aquarian men. I think both the women too, but the men especially. They are very, very closed off, and you only know as much as they want you to know. But from Aquarians, we can all learn how to set boundaries, because Aquarians, men or women, are fantastic at just being like, yes, I will do this, no, I will not do that. I have learnt from the Aquarians in my life that no is a full sentence. They don't over explain themselves. You're lucky if they choose to explain themselves, but at the end of the day, especially if they think it's common sense, you just have to figure that out in your own time. They're not sitting here, they don't feel the urge or the need to prove themselves to other people. They just exist. And the way that I've watched it rile up people, like especially authority figures, I think a lot of Aquarians, men and women, really don't always get along with authority figures because of how they choose to conduct themselves when it comes to authority. Because as far as they're concerned, I will only listen insofar as it makes sense for my own value system. So once you start doing things that don't make sense, firstly, you shouldn't be beyond me questioning you, because Aquarians want to understand the world. They want to understand it, and they do seek out to understand it, and they tend to be quite involved in whatever their intellectual pursuits are, in their humanitarian pursuits. They want to really understand the basis for their own beliefs. They are not the type to, let's compare them to Gemini, right? While Gemini will inform themselves by knowing a little bit of everything and feeling like they have a grand base level understanding of the world because they pick up so many little skills here and there, right? And then they value that, and they look at their intelligence from the perspective of, I have more quantity of data, and so this is the place from which I am expressing my opinion. Whereas for Aquarians, they're more about the quality. They're a fixed sign. They will learn something or find out they have an interest, and they'll really take it far. They will learn as much as they can about it so that they can defend their position. They will learn as much as they can about it so that they can correct you and teach you in conversation. When we're having discussions and you say something that's particularly ignorant, they can be like, oh my God, maybe you didn't know. But the research actually says, and the Aquarians are the type to cite their sources. I mean, literally, my sibling does that. He would be willing to pull up his sources at any given time. He's not someone you can scare in an argument because he understands his own mind. And I see that in a lot of Aquarians. They have such a passion and such a understanding and enjoyment of their own intellectual prowess, and they are willing to showcase it. And it's not always about the fact that they're not doing it to say, hey guys, just see that I'm intelligent, hey guys, I need you to know that I'm well read, hey guys, like they genuinely, when they tell you information, it's because they're trying to be helpful. Now, if I was talking about things that aren't the most positive, I would talk about their God complex. But I think if we're talking about it in a positive light, I think they have big heads. They do have big heads about themselves, about their opinions, whether they say it to you or not, or they just show it. Sometimes some things that are known don't need to be explained. And I find it a lot more with Aquarius women. They're not going to be like, hey, I need you to know that I'm the best. They're just going to act like it. My favorite Aquarian woman celebrity that I can refer to would be Megan Thee Stallion. And I think her music, funny, that just became a controversy recently, if you've seen the whole Hanna-Barbera interview. But her music is like very uplifting and is there to help you raise your self-esteem, remind you that you're a badass bitch, remind you to focus on yourself and worry about you. Don't worry about what the next person's doing. Basically, she's like, I'm too hot. I'm too focused on me. I was really happy to see her become really, really famous during uni and still decide to finish uni in like, I think it's like medical administration, something along those lines. To me, that just told me that like education was important to her with or without fame. That's just the personal value system that she had. She wanted to get her education. She wanted to get her degree. That was really important to her, whether or not she has money coming out of her ass, right? And so I feel like Aquarian women are better at being motivating in a way that is softer and in a way that is less aggravating. Whereas Aquarian men can be really motivating when they focus on themselves and they do their own thing, sort of like when you're watching them. But this is just personal, of course, so you can disagree. Personally, I find Aquarian men are less motivating in one-on-one conversation, because in one-on-one conversations with like Aquarius men that I've known, I might really enjoy what they had to say, and it might really tell me things that I want to like research later or look into. I might realize that I wasn't as well read on a topic as I thought, or I hadn't considered a particular angle that they're coming from. But I find Aquarius males to be just a little bit colder, and maybe it's also because I haven't dated them, so I've only had them as friends or family members, and so the interactions are just like a little cool. But the women, I think, are actually like really palatable to other women, despite the fact that they stand out. Who they aren't palatable to would be your people pleasers, your male centric, women, anything like that. They probably shy away from. If you're too clingy, most Aquarians won't like that unless maybe you become their partner, and even then it's only clingy to an extent because they value their independence and they want you to be an independent person in your own right. I find Aquarian women to be motivating and inspiring, and they're very similar to their sister sign Leo. So I find Leo women to be very like, they can feed my ego and give me a bigger head and make me feel like a badass bitch. They're very affirming in their language. They're very affirming when they're your friend. And when they like you. And I think it's the exact same thing with Aquarian women. They are very affirming. They are very inspiring. They're very motivating by being themselves, but they'll also look at you and they will tell you and they'll point out your good traits. You might come to them with something that someone complained about you, and you're starting to believe that like maybe they were right, and they'll be like, no, actually, this is how I've always seen you, and this is why that person, that wasn't like a well-informed opinion. That didn't really come from a good place, did it? Love Aquarians for that. Aquarians are inspiring and motivating because they are the star. If you know anything about tarot, the star in the major arcana represents the Aquarians. So if you don't know anything about tarot, look up the star, look up what it means. But the star is really about hopes, dreams, and wishes. And we also see it move into the astrological wheel. The 11th house, which is the house of Aquarius, is about hopes, dreams, and wishes. And so whether or not an Aquarian is actually popular in the sense of like the global stage, like fame, they tend to be popular in their communities. So every Aquarian that I know is well known in their local community. They have a big lot of friends that are close friends, and then people that just know of them. People want to hang around them. People want to be known to associate with them. But it's not easy knowing or loving Aquarians, because to know and love an Aquarian is to accept that you love someone who's so completely themselves that they're not going to lie for your benefit. They're not going to lie to make you feel better. So Aquarians will be the ones to tell you if, like, hey, did I come across in this way? They'll be like, yeah, you did. You wanted to know, you asked the question, I answered. So if you value truth, honesty, self-sufficiency, independence, be with an Aquarian. Aquarians and 11th house placements can make you a sapiosexual. You can be, if you don't know what that means, sapiosexuals are people that value intelligence when it comes to attraction with other people. I have Venus and Mars in the 11th, so being a sapiosexual is literally who I am. I could not, for the life of me, value someone's looks over their intellect. Just doesn't work for me. Not in any capacity. And yeah, Aquarians are known for enjoying, whether in friendships or romantic relationships, quirky people, interesting people like themselves. It doesn't have to be as quirky as the Aquarian. Like, it's not a competition, but it's about the individuality, because that is something that they really, really, really adore. Aquarius women tend to end up attracting overbearing men romantically for some reason. But Aquarian women, despite how they can come across when they're single, this like hyper independence, this ability to like self focus, and they have so much going for them. Another star sign that is just full of hobbies and like different life experiences, like travel and doing this and putting their finger in that pot and that pie. Despite being a fixed sign, they are well and truly versed in different aspects of like the intellectual world and the physical world, and it's so, so fun. Despite all of the self-focus, if you were with an Aquarian woman, you would be with someone who can truly give time to you. They can truly have some like they have traits of a devoted partner. They can be very feminine in how they respond in relationships. They use all of that masculinity and that masculine energy to be able to achieve their goals, the men and the women, but the women especially, because I'm talking about the opposite gender energy. So the women are able to use that masculine energy to assert themselves, to set boundaries, to achieve career success, because Aquarians are very ambitious. It just might not make it their personality. They might not show it in the way a Capricorn does, but Aquarians are super, super focused. But yeah, the women will use their masculine energy for all those things, but having watched them in relationships, they can really come into their own. They can be as devoted as any other, more traditionally feminine sign like a Cancer, but they still have their own edge. They are still, a feminist about it. And they'll do their best to put everything into the relationship, give you as many chances as they can, and then if it doesn't pan out, they will leave and never look back. So yes, I admire how we can learn to set boundaries with Aquarians. Aquarians really think big. When I think about the 11th house, when I think about the star card in the tarot, when I think about the idea of like stars representing Aquarius, the galaxy, the solar system, how expansive that is similar to me in my head of how expansive thinking Aquarians are. They want to reach for heights that maybe to a normal person seem a little too far-fetched, because they're not operating on the same level. They're not operating in the level of an Aries or a Taurus. We are near the end of a zodiac. We're thinking big and bold, okay? And so, yeah, I love that they are not going to necessarily do the traditional thing, not in the way they date, not in the way that they do a career. You know, an Aquarian could decide to be an astrologer, and that is an odd thing in society that tells you that astrology isn't real, it's just a pseudoscience, right? An Aquarian can decide to be an astronaut, because Aquarian to me is also synonymous with scientist. Mathematics, science, I think, can be specialities of people that are born under this sign. They can think super, super, super logically with all of that air energy. And it's just beautiful. It doesn't even take away from their ability to be creative, because to be revolutionary, to think ahead of the times, to think futuristically, you have to. There's no way you can't. And yeah, the way that they view humanity, the way that they hold space for people's differences, is something that we can all learn from. And Aquarius will accept you for everything that you are, warts and all, while someone might be looking to change and mold the Aquarius to conform to their belief systems. You're just not the same, you know? So yeah, while Aquarians aren't necessarily known to be romantic, it doesn't mean that they can't be in relationships. But I think Aquarians are a little bit more discerning about what relationships they enter into, or even the reasoning behind why they're entering a relationship. I find Aquarians want to do things with certainty and with an understanding, a deeper understanding. They don't want to just do things for the sake of doing. Now, you might be much easier, you might have an easier time to get in a friends with benefits, some sort of arrangement wherein everyone gets their needs met with an Aquarian, because they're so focused on whatever they're doing. They might not even be thinking about dating. They might not be in an era for that, but it doesn't mean that they aren't normal human beings, sexual beings that need to have their needs met. But to be able to take an emotional connection and take it further with an Aquarian is not something that you can even begin to control. It really is fully dependent on them, on their needs, and whether or not they feel like it's the right time, it's appropriate. They're really thoughtful about the actions that they take. So yeah, I admire the ambitious quality of Aquarians. I admire, how can I forget, Aquarian energy sort of rules friendship. The 11th house rules friendship. And so Aquarians have a really, really big community of friends. It might not be super large, but it tends to be quite diverse. Having friends from different cultures, having friends that literally live in different countries to you. I don't even know that you could know a full Aquarian social sphere sometimes. It can be so big. But then I've also met the women, and I feel like the women tend to have much closer, close-knit friendships that are like a couple of friends, whereas the Aquarian men that I've met are a lot more social in that regard. But then I find the men are harder to pin in a relationship than the women. But either way, if you are to enter a relationship with an Aquarian, we're thinking long term. We're not thinking a short fling. The only way you're having a short fling is if the premise of the relationship to begin with was supposed to be lighthearted and it wasn't supposed to be that deep. If you want anything deep with an Aquarian, you're looking at years long of a relationship, because they don't do anything half-assed, and fixed signs tend to struggle with change, and so they kind of want to maintain whatever they're doing at the moment. But yeah, if you want an Aquarius baddie, then you need to flex your intelligence, flex your open-mindedness, because ignorance is just not a thing. It's not something that's going to be well tolerated. You need to be their friend first, instead of hoping to just jump straight in the sack or jump straight into a relationship. You need to be patient with Aquarians, because they know what they're doing. whether you understand it or not. And they have, like I said, they have their own ideals and ideas as to when said things should happen. You're not going to force that. You're not going to foist that upon them. You're not going to change their timing. There's nothing an Aquarius hates more than being forced or having someone even try. It's like, how dare you try to force me to do something sometimes? It's like, you thought you could put me in a box? I think it's why, as someone whose ruler is in the 11th and I have other 11th house placements, I get all like irate at the idea that someone thought that they could put me in a box. Oh, you saw me talking about astrology and you thought that I wasn't someone you could talk to about biology or chemistry. Like, you thought I was a flat earther because I believe this thing. You thought that I was a really nice person because you had this one interaction with me, and now you think that you can encroach on my boundaries and you think I'm not going to say anything about it. That's Aquarian energy. It is zany, it is fun, it's individualistic, it is about the collective. How can we change and grow as a human race? And how can we leave a better planet for the next humans ahead of us? So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you've got any thoughts, feelings about Aquarian placements, Uranian placements, what you think about your rulership, whatever, please put it down in the comments below. I love myself some astrology discourse. And I will see you for the last sign of the zodiac. Have a great day.